I've spent the last 8 years, almost 8 years, on the Intelligence Committee, and the last 4 years intensively studying the Russian interference in the election of 2016. I can assure you that the Russians are going to try and are trying to interfere in the election of 2020. It's probable that the Chinese will. It's likely that the Iranians will, and possible that the North Koreans will. And the problem with this challenge that we face is, and it goes to all of you who are working in the administration of our elections, they don't have to change votes. All they have to do is sow doubt. Doubt is the dagger in the heart of democracy. If people doubt the election results, if people doubt the fairness of elections, and that's a very high standard to meet. And I think we just have to be thinking about that as we approach all of these issues. For example, online voting. I'm sympathetic to the needs of those who are overseas and to the disabled, but I think we need to be exceedingly careful about online voting. I just spent a year with the National Cyber Commission on cyber threats to the elections and other parts of our society. And there is no safe online voting system. There is none. I have not seen any evidence of a safe online voting system. I've seen lots of evidence to the contrary. So to the extent that those are used to enable people who otherwise couldn't vote to do so, we need to be exceedingly careful about how they relate to the rest of the voting system, whether somebody can use an online voting system for the disabled, for example, to get into the rest of the voting system, get into the voter database. So I think those are matters of exceedingly important concern. The risk of registration online. It seems to me, Mr. Chair, and as you always remind us, you were, in fact, a Secretary of State. We need to think about what's our responsibility, what are our powers. And ultimately, these elections are going to be up to the states and the mechanics. So what do we have to do? We need to provide some insight and advice, which I have just volunteered about online voting and the risk of malicious activity in connection with our elections. Secondly, though, we do have to supply the resources, or we don't have to, but we should. And if we don't, particularly in the light of the COVID emergency, we're failing our responsibility and failing our voters. Ms. Clark, you talked about long lines. Often those long lines are in neighborhoods of color. And where you place your voting places are important. These kinds of decisions are absolutely critical. But it's my belief, and I don't know what the right number is, but it's my belief that there is a need for additional support for simply PPE, for election personnel, for other techniques for keeping the clerk's office open for more early voting. All of those things are really critical. A third place where it seems to me, Mr. Chairman, we really have a responsibility, based upon all the testimony that we've had today, is the post office. There was $10 billion in the CARES Act as a loan to the post office. To my knowledge, it has not happened. And yet the post office is facing imminent insolvency. September is a date that I've seen. Given that there are now 9 states that predominantly vote by mail, and many others who will see a great deal of additional voting by mail, we have to provide them with the infrastructure that votes by mail can be counted. And if the post office can't process those, and the Secretary of State, one of our Secretaries of State said, it's got to be in by the election day. Well, what if they physically can't meet that? Those people are disenfranchised. So, Mr. Chairman, I feel that that's something that we really have to attend to, and we can't just skirt around the issue of the support for the post office because the president doesn't like their package rates. This is a matter of fundamental access to the ballot box for the people of America, and if the post office can't get the ballots to the clerks, then they're being disenfranchised. So, I've gone over my time. I didn't manage to get in a question, but I think these are some points that we really have to consider. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate your doing this hearing.
Thank you, Senator King, and there'll be another chance to ask questions if you've got